So welcome to today's episode of Behind the Lens podcast. Today my guest is Goose McGrath, who is the founder with his partner Gabby. So Goose and Gabby are the founders of Dashdot, which is a buyer's advocacy here in Australia, and get an opportunity to interview him. He's had some extraordinary growth within his business, within his life, and a whole range of other things. And I was extremely privileged to, I guess, see behind the scenes in part of that journey as they were just starting out, and a whole range of other things as well. So today's a really cool episode. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure you will as well. Today's episode is powered by Triple Effect Media, where we create 6 months worth of video content for YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok, and film it all in the space of 2 days. So we do everything from scripting, filming, editing, as well as publishing the videos to all of the major social media channels, and keep our clients posted along the way. So if you're interested in finding out more, head to tripleeffect.com.au, where you can download some information or book in a call. Otherwise, let's get started with today's show. Big welcome to a somewhat long-time friend, Goose, who we've done some work with in the past. I'll let you introduce who you are and what you do, Goose, but I'm really excited for today's conversation. I know there's going to be a lot of gold nuggets. I've personally been able to not only see behind the scenes of the business, behind what's happening in Dashdot for a period of time, and obviously watch from afar from the rest of the period of time. But also, you know, I really respect Goose and Gabby as people, as humans, your ethics, your values, and things like that. So really excited to obviously have you on the podcast. Welcome, Goose.
Al, anytime I get to spend time with you is time well spent, so I'm delighted to be here, and I'm looking forward to a good chat.
Stop it. My head won't fit on the screen if you talk about me like that. So do you want to just give a quick little intro as to who you are?
Look how enriched I am. Look how happy I am to be here with you, Al. Right? So
Absolutely. So do you want to just give a quick little intro to people who live under a rock who don't know who you are?
Yeah, that's fine. Why don't I do that by kind of giving a little bit of a background?
Yeah, please.
That might actually be useful. So, about 5 years ago, or actually a few more years ago than that, I was basically a drunk alcoholic, drug addict, living on my office floor, broke, going nowhere fast, not exactly some kind of pillar of kind of like business or investing or anything like that at all. Met Gabby, got sober, decided to try and do something with our lives, and we thought, I know the answer to us living a better life is going to be to achieve financial freedom through real estate investing. We had no idea what we were doing, so we then went and bought the wrong property in the wrong place at the wrong time, lost a bunch of money, thought, hang on a second, that's not how that was supposed to work. Well, why do some people make money? Why do some people not make money in real estate? That led us to start pulling on a lot of threads and start to try and work that out. We developed a thesis, and which seemed to work, and then we thought, wow, imagine all the other people that might make a mistake like we had just... Yeah, well, there's a little bit more to it than that. Location selection, characteristics, and there's a little bit more science in it. We did wrap it up in a concept that we called the Holy Trinity, which was sort of walked away from a little bit now, which we can talk about as well, because you know, when the facts change, I change my mind, right? And we've developed a lot more stuff since then. But we pulled on this thread, and then we thought, maybe we could help a few people avoid making property mistakes. That would be a good start, and try and help them build their wealth. So we started Dashdot. When we started Dashdot, which is Australia's leading property portfolio growth partners, we help people to build prolific, profitable property portfolios all around the country. It's awesome. But when we started with $5,000, no safety net, no backup, no nothing, no network, didn't know anyone in the real estate investing space, had never really run a business, didn't really know marketing, didn't really know sales, didn't really know anything. And we had to choose between whether we were going to eat food or run ads. We chose ads, and we'd walk around the supermarket eating food off the shelves. That's how we got through the first few months. It was pretty wild. Yeah. Started growing the business pretty quickly. Then downscaled the business. Then COVID hit, nearly blew up the business. And since then, we've grown the business now into an 8-figure business now, which is really cool. We've also got another company called Global PropTech Solutions, which is developing real estate technology solutions to solve the property market. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Wow, you did that in like less than a minute or just over. How many times have you done that before? A few, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, a few, but
okay.
it's, it's like I like to
It's
try
good.
and give people
It's a nice little wrap up.
Give people the meat. It's like
Succinct.
It's a good wrap up. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, we've gone from here to there, great,
Love it.
and then we can kind of like slice and dice into any little part of it. So
Love it. All right. Well, that's a great way of summing it up. All right. So, when we first, I think it might have been roughly 3 to 4 years ago, we first connected. I think it was through maybe a post I did on a Facebook ad or a Facebook group.
I'll tell you exactly what happened. I did tell you exactly. No.
Okay,
I'll tell you exactly what happened and exactly when it was. So it was in 2019. It was actually back around the time that I was just talking about when we had not much money. We were actually, when we started Dashdot, we'd also just bought an investment property. That investment property was what some people might call a fixer-upper. It's what I affectionately call the crack den. We still own it, but we thought we were going to move in, start the renovation, start the business. We started the business, not the renovation. So we were living in Geelong at the time. I saw an ad. We'd started getting a little bit of traction in the business, but we were still basically broke, right? Like we still had pretty much no money, and we were growing the business. And I saw this ad. I clicked on the landing page. Videos seemed all right. Seemed to have a good I like I like marketing, and I liked the way it was marketed. I thought, all right, let's give this a crack. And that was back in 2019, so nearly 4 years ago. Nearly 4 years ago now.
Yeah. Yep. Crazy. And then so I think from memory, I can't remember if you guys came up to Bondi because you were looking to move at the time first, and then we filmed in Geelong. Can't remember which way.
No, we did Geelong first. It was Geelong first.
Yeah, there's my memory.
Geelong first. Yeah,
I'm glad you're here and you remember
we
these things.
And I know all about it. Yeah. No, so back in so you came down to Geelong. We rented an Airbnb. We did some videos there. Yep. Of course, whenever you do your first videos, they're not your best videos, are they? Right? Let's be real. No. But
exactly,
you develop more capability over time.
Yeah.
And then what's funny actually is, that time that we were in Bondi, we were coming to Sydney. We were going to Sydney for a few things. So we were recording a podcast up there. We had a few things on the go. So we thought, all right, let's go to Sydney. We'd never stayed in Bondi. We'd never been to Bondi. And we thought, we've heard that it's okay and nice. So why don't we get an Airbnb there for the weekend? And you came, we did some filming there. But also at the same time, we sort of suddenly had this moment. We're like, oh, this is beautiful. What are we doing back in that crack den down in Geelong? And so... I think it was
literally
less than a
2 or
month
3
later.
months
I think it was
later.
maybe even. No, it was less than a month. It was 2 or 3 weeks later. It was 2 or 3 weeks later. We literally went back. We went back to Geelong.
Yeah.
Called up the real estate agent. Said, "Can you send a property manager around? We need to have a chat."
Yeah.
We then basically took 90% of our belongings and just sold the lot. Literally, just sold the lot. Just chucked it all up, which is, all right, come around, just give us, we don't really care just give us money, get rid of it, right? Cleared out everything except for, there was a small amount of stuff that was left. Yeah. Basically packed up the Toyota Corolla and up the road. It was literally only a few weeks. Yeah.
That's
and then we were in Sydney. And then, which was pretty fun. And we arrived, we got a little bit of Sydney, and then it was just, then we had the summer of covered in smoke because of all the bushfires, which... Smoke's the least of the problems with the bushfires, of course, and then COVID lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. So we got to enjoy Bondi for a little while, uninterrupted. But no, it was good. It was good.
That's awesome. Yeah. Now, talking about that time, I remember, and this is going to segue into Goose Face Killer was your Instagram profile. So when you handed over your socials and everything else for us to publish, it was like at Gooseface Killer, right? And then so obviously helped me to understand a little bit the backstory of where Gooseface Killer was. Obviously, so from what I understand, you're a DJ. You mentioned, drug addictions and things like that, which I've been able to successfully overcome as well. But I'd love to understand, the life that you lived is so significantly different to obviously the life you live today. And obviously there's a transition to that piece. But I'd love to understand, what was the breaking point that you're like, fuck, I need to do something? Was it Gabby? Was it something? What was that transition point for you?
Okay, so the first thing I'll say to that is that the life that we have is absolutely because of the choices that we make consciously or unconsciously. And that is the truth. Now, I consciously chose my reality, which might sound bizarre, but I consciously chose my reality. So when I was 14, I broke my back in a motorbike accident. I thought I was going to be some kind of soccer star. Of course, I never really was, but every teenage boy thinks they're really going to be.
Absolutely.
I thought
everyone can dream once in a while.
Yeah. But that's what I thought I was going to do, and of course, anyway. So when I broke my back, all I could do was listen to music. Because of that, I was like, oh, hey, there's no gigs in my local area. I grew up in the country. I started organising. As soon as I could walk again, I mowed lawns till I had enough money to rent a hall, start putting on gigs, and it was all like punk, rock, metal. Like I was a proper metalhead back in the day. Was a lead singer for some grindcore bands and the whole shooting match.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So, I was in a touring punk band for a while and all that kind of stuff. So, but also basically that was the catalyst of me starting a career organising events. So organised events all over the world, everything, and big stuff as well. So like, organising or managing large areas at Glastonbury, in the senior management team for Boomtown, which is one of the largest festivals in the UK. Worked on things like Burning Man, did a million person event for the Malaysian government. Big stuff. And in amongst that, like music was my passion. And so as a kind of, I was never really one for like actually playing instruments, but I have an ear for, I always said I was not a musician, I was a selector, right? So for me, I was a good selector, still am a good selector, but it was never going to be my career path. It was a passion. And so I would DJ. Once I got out of the punk rock phase and sort of got into more electronic music, started DJing. I actually remember I started organising a club night in Melbourne not long after I'd moved to Melbourne. I was only like 18. I didn't have any friends, met some people and whatever. And I said, hey, do you guys want to be DJs? And they were like, yeah. And so three of us started out as DJs. I picked my name then, called Gooseface Killer, which was modelled off Ghostface Killer from the Wu-Tang Clan. Didn't play any hip-hop. It was all techno and stuff. And back then it was a bit of indie and everything like that as well. One of the three is still actually a DJ and professional DJ now. His name's Percy. He's killing it in the Melbourne scene. He's nice. A total legend. But it wasn't so much the DJ element of it. It was actually more so the... there was lifestyle choices that kind of fitted in and around that. The music and the DJing was kind of fine, and yes, it contributed to me being in a party type environment, but it was also the touring with events all the time. And I also made a conscious choice when I was younger. I actually wanted to know, and this is going to sound really, really freaking bizarre, but I actually wanted to know what it was like to get to the bottom, because I felt that I could never really understand or have empathy for people in that kind of a situation unless I actually experienced it for myself. Like when you see people on the street and they're begging and stuff and they're homeless and you're like, what happened? And how can you ever really understand it until you actually take it? So bizarrely enough,
can I just
actually
ask,
remember,
if you don't mind me asking, what is it about you that wanted to know? Because it's a very heart selfless thing to then put yourself in front of that path. Like what is it about you that wanted to know about that?
Curiosity. Honestly. Curiosity. Like I care deeply about people, but I care deep, like everything I do is driven by the impact that I can have on other people, right? But there was, as much as anything, I would probably say curiosity is probably the biggest thing. Throughout my entire life, all I've ever done is question stuff, right? And so for me I've always had a curiosity around what happens at the edges. Like in the middle, it's kind of like, it's quite vanilla. Everyone's operating in the middle. So I always wanted to know what's at the edges of our consciousness, of our capabilities, of all of that kind of stuff. And so for me, what I wanted to understand is I wanted to understand that vector. And I actually remember making a choice. This isn't one. I actually remember thinking about it and going. And would have been around 18, and because I remember I was living in Melbourne, and I actually remember going, okay, cool. I'm going to give this a crack. I'm going to see how far I can go down this pathway so that I can see what that looks like. And so I did. I went on a multi-year journey of progressively going further down the rabbit hole of kind of substance and all of that kind of, all at the same time. Super high functioning, by the way, super high functioning. I was running pubs and tours and businesses and 3 jobs, and I was super high functioning, but also wanted to push that envelope to see where to get to, which was kind of fine and all that kind of stuff. And I kept I was able to kind of do that to some degree, I guess I would say successfully, in the context that I was able to continue to do stuff. But then in my late 20s, I started to lose my identity, and I started to lose that that sense of control, because it was always like there was a control element to it throughout. But then when I was in my late 20s, I think I got quite depressed, and I started to lose that sense of self and that sense of identity, and my identity started to become based around my capability to significantly abuse substances and who I was when I was that person, which wasn't really me, but I'd forgotten. And it got to a point where it was pretty bad, and it was let's just say it was on the extreme end of what people would consider to be survivable, is what I was kind of like consuming on a regular basis.
So
really,
and it got to
a point
where
Gabby basically super pushing the edges, which was fine from the curiosity perspective, but again, I'd lost my perspective, that it had become the way that I was rather than an experiment that I was conducting in my life. And that was a really interesting, and so then we were working on an event, and Gabby basically left the event, right? Because I was not taking care of myself. And I realized that if I didn't sort myself out, that two things would happen. I'd lose Gabby, and in a couple of years I'd be dead. There was literally no other path. If I kept doing what I was doing, I wouldn't be alive today. That's 100% certain. And so, pretty much like 2 weeks after that specific event, or maybe less than, maybe probably 2 weeks after, I went completely cold turkey. So off the drugs, off the alcohol, off the cigarettes, off the everything. Also quit carbs, sugar, went full keto. It's just like, because I like to work the edges. I like to go to the edges. So I was like, right, okay, how do we go from like complete debauchery to, hardcore? And it was great, and that was a real turning point. Like that was the turning point where I got clarity back in my mind and started to rediscover and remember who I was at my core. And why I was doing why any of the actions I took were the actions that I was taking, and started to really deeply explore that stuff again. So,
thank you for sharing, first of all. But secondly, isn't it so funny? And you'll easily be able to relate to this, like exploring the edges. Not that you would actively, or maybe you will, but actively go out looking to, destroy your business. But it's those challenges in business. It's those challenges in, clients or situations, circumstances, unforeseeable circumstances, aka COVID or whatever, that actually allow you to see the very darkness of where you don't want to be versus the light of, if you will, the light of where you really want to be, and how to obviously, or at least acknowledging this is what I don't want, and this is this is what it feels like, and things like that. But I'd love to understand your perspective on just that concept anyway.
I love that perspective, right? Because there is no good or bad. There is no good or bad. There is only the emotion with which we imbue it, right? So there is no good situation. There is no bad situation. It's just all stuff, right? And this is the fundamental. I guess this is the kind of fundamental belief that I've kind of carried through and really started to explore. Like, I explored psychedelics very heavily in my 20s, and honestly, one of the best things that I've ever done. If I'm really honest, that I think has been one of the better things that I've done with my life. I haven't done that kind of anything like that in years, right? But nonetheless, it helped me to understand those outer limits of perception, consciousness, reality, context, all of that kind of stuff, which really set me up for a lot of success later on. Now, in terms of then thinking about that, you then get to have a choice. I think it's good to kind of test out the extremes. It's good to kind of feel into those kind of things. Should you willingly destroy your life? No, I don't think you should, right? You can do controlled experiments, right? There's a big difference, right? But you cannot have beauty without contrast. That's just a fact. There is no good without bad. There is no right without wrong. There is no beauty without ugliness. There is no love without hate. And this this idea of polarity in the universe is a very old. It's a very it's one of the kind of more pure fundamental truths that's carried through from the oldest religions into the newest developments of consciousness. If you trace the idea, the concepts around, say, quantum physics, they go back through to starts kind of in chemistry, and before chemistry it was alchemistry or alchemy, and before alchemy it was Hermeticism, and Hermeticism traces its roots all the way back to ancient Egypt. And so this concept of polarity is one of the universal truths that's carried all the way through. Yep. Now, that being said, the goal shouldn't be to continuously find these massive peaks and troughs. It just shouldn't. The goal should actually be how do you smooth it out? And that has been my focus for some time, is like, how do we smooth those kind of things out? And so if you imagine everything in the universe is a frequency, and frequencies, what they do when you look at them on, when you watch them, they go up and down. They're like wavy lines. You see it in an echocardiogram or any kind of like audio track or whatever. And so the goal is not to see how far away from the central equilibrium you can get your frequency to bounce, because that puts you, that's chaos, right? So the broader the band of the frequency, the more chaotic it is. The more that you can collapse that down to equilibrium, the closer you get to enlightenment. And if you look at the Buddhist kind of tradition of trying to achieve enlightenment, that is effectively what it is. It's how do you get your frequency such that you have no variations. And when you can bring those variations of good, bad, happy, sad, love, hate, any of those kind of things that are opposites, when you can bring those opposites together to the point that they finally meet, that's when you reach enlightenment. That's when you become one with the universe. That's the concept, right? And so the goal should be, how do you do that? Now, that is a journey, not an event. To achieve anything like that is a journey and not an event. Buddhists can train their entire lives and never achieve enlightenment. And so, but that is and I'm not trying to say that I'm trying to become enlightened, but certainly that quest of reducing the
bounce,
the variance of that yeah, exactly, is the kind of thing. And it's really interesting because we've had some major challenges in our business. We've grown ridiculously fast. Like hypergrowth is growing 2 to 3 times, or 200% a year. We grew 1,000% in 2 years.
Wow.
It's been very fast, right? And so when that kind of stuff happens, you have like shit goes wrong, shit breaks, right, along the way.
Yeah.
And it happens, right? The machine is not built to go that fast, right? And so what actually has happened to me over that period of time, and through that transgression of all of these ups and downs, and with a continuous focus on how do I bring that consolidated experience of everything that I experienced in my 20s has set me up now in my 30s to be able to really bring that back to a central point. And so when things go wrong, my demeanor is exactly as you see it here today. When things go right, my demeanor is exactly as you see it here today, which can be really freaking confusing for some people, because we'll hit some amazing, massive milestone and I'll be like, cool, next.
Yeah.
Or something will blow up and I'll go, okay,
yeah,
cool, next. And so that I think is awesome, because once you can get control down to that level, and again, I'm not purporting to be any degree of mastery about this, but certainly, and I have my good days and bad days and all of that kind of stuff. But once you can bring that down, it allows you to be really focused on what your core objectives are. And to the degree that people can literally create their own reality. I don't mean metaphorically, right? And I don't mean like, yeah, you get to choose what career you want to do. I mean literally and fundamentally transform the current perception and actual reality, local realism, through their thoughts and their actions and their behaviors, to the degree that you can then start to have control over that, you can start to do a lot more stuff. Because and I know I'm waffling a bit, Al, but just bear with me a little second. I'm listening. Here, because if your thoughts are spiraling all over the place, and let's say 50% of the time, they're like, oh my God, everything's, I don't know if I can swear, but everything's fucked, right? And everything's about to crash and blow up. if that's 50% of your thoughts, and the other 50% of your thoughts are like, oh my God, that's all, everything's great, and I'm a hero, and life's good, and yada, 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 what is actually happening is you're putting out mixed messages into the universe. And when I say mixed messages into the universe, I don't mean sending letters to Santa. I mean, like, on a quantum level, you are like, it's confusing. You're like, is this cup of tea hot or cold? What's going on here? And it's like, and you're going to get nowhere fast because you'll move a bit in each direction versus bringing that centralized down and having clarity around, I'm moving in this direction. And dude, when you do that, life speeds up.
Absolutely. And I think a really important part to talk about is also like time in business and time in experiences and all those other things that I know have definitely been the case for me. I can see it's the case for you as well. I'm really curious to know more, like, the thought of energy in business is something that sort of really, like, everything that you've just been talking about, it's something that I always think about, even to the degree of like, where we talk about frequencies and even around business, around money, around people, situations, circumstances, and you can put a label of good, bad, positive, negative, whatever the case is. But it's so interesting, like, how you can effectively, like, what I'd love to know, and where I'm getting to with this question is, if you were at, if you're at a place where you're like, this is not somewhere I want to be, this is probably the darker side of where I want to be, versus where I do want to be, what are some things that you do, I guess, with your energy, or what are some things that you do when you're faced with these circumstances? Obviously, you talked about calmness, and that comes from experience. It comes from knowing. It comes from trusting. But I'd love to understand your way of going through that process.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say calmness. I would say clarity, and I wouldn't say it comes from experience. I'd say it comes from habits. Okay. Right. And I think that there's a big distinction there. Because you can have all the experience in the world, but unless you craft very specific practices, habits, rituals that are designed to help you to become the best version of yourself, whatever that may be for you, then you can be I know people that have got loads of experience, 50 years in business, and they're completely emotionally dysregulated. They've never achieved the success they want. They're broadly speaking depressed and unhappy. They feel like they've lived a life unfulfilled. It's like, dude, what is going on? Like, you've chosen that, you silly person. Like, what have you done? Like, what have you wasted all that time? Right? Yeah, exactly. Right. And so the question is good. So I'll talk you. Everyone experiences pain, right? And so that is okay. I specifically, and I've realized this more recently, and it's probably something that has evolved over a period of time. Everyone says, when you face challenges, see them as opportunities and all of that kind of stuff, which sounds pretty trite. But if you can actually, every time you face a challenge, like, go through the process of working out how that is an opportunity, this really helps. There's a piece in there about transforming growth mindset. I might talk about that, and then I'll talk about my habits. Because for a lot of people, when they're in a place where they're feeling stressed, confused, unhappy, depressed, all of that kind of stuff, it can be really hard to see through the other side. And there is a specific method that I don't know that exists anywhere else. I'm not prepared to say I've invented it, but like, it's a method that works. That anyone can apply to change their current state. And it doesn't matter whether you're having problems in your relationships, problems with your finances, problems with whatever. It doesn't matter. You can do the same exercise. So what you do is you write a list of all of the things that are causing you pain, discomfort, dissatisfaction, unhappiness, whatever. Could be like, I feel like I'm having relationship issues. I feel like my partner doesn't love me, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter what it is, right? So you've got a list. And then for each of those things that you've written down, you've got to write down 5 ways that it is good for you. And the way that you do that is you literally ask yourself, how is this good for me? How is this good for me? Oh, I feel like my partner doesn't love me. How is this good for me? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's helping you to build resilience, or maybe it's helping you to be more compassionate, or maybe it's helping you to realize, how you can improve. There's all different ways you can think about it, right? So whatever that may be for you, right? Sometimes it could be helping you to realize that you're in the wrong relationship too, right? So whatever that is. But at minimum, 5 ways that the situation that you're experiencing that you're unhappy with, 5 ways that it is good for you. And then off the back of that, for each of those 5 ways, write down one action step you can take to crystallize your journey in that direction. So it could be like, my business is failing, for example. I feel like our sales have fallen off a cliff, right? For example. That's pretty scary. Well, how is this good for me? Well, this is good for me because it's helping me to realize that we've had too much reliance on Facebook, for example. Or this is good for me because it's helped me to realize that we should be better at managing money so that if things like this happen, we don't get concerned that we're going to run out of money. This is good for me because it's helping me to think about where else in the business can I generate revenue, and instead of new clients, maybe should I be focusing on repeat clients? There's all of these different things. So then you can look at all of those things and you can be like, okay, so too much reliance on Facebook. Well, what could we do then? Okay, maybe we could start advertising on Meta and Google. Right? So you could pick a few action items off the back of that. And if you do that enough times, you will literally transform your mind such that anytime you experience an obstacle or a challenge, you will automatically start to see all of the goodness. And I look, literally, Al, and I'll come back to my habits in a minute because it's useful. But literally, we are launching a product. I won't go into too many details because there's some confidentiality stuff around it. But we're launching a software solution, and we recently, yesterday actually, received a major setback. Well, let's just call it a major setback, like to the degree that we might not be able to charge money for the product, which sounds a little odd. And when we were in the meeting and when we were hearing this setback, I started smiling. This is not me trying to trick myself. I started smiling and I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome because things are about to get really interesting. And I honestly, I feel happier today than I did the day before because I'm like, oh, this is so weird. And there's a truth, there's a stoicism that the obstacle is the way. And Ryan Holiday wrote a great book about it. Once you can understand that, the obstacle is the way. The obstacle that is in the way that becomes the way, and so then you start to go, okay, great. So an obstacle has just appeared. I bet you this is going to lead us on an even better and more successful path. How exciting! You start to get genuinely excited by that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So is that useful, Al?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. What I guess there's one thing I guess I just want to, obviously be conscious of your time and some of the things that I'd love to know. But, you mentioned something.
You can ask as many questions as you like, and we can run over if you want.
Yeah, sweet. So, I'm really interested because I've experienced something very similar. Probably not to the degree of 1,000% growth, but there was a period of time where our business was operating, and then it almost, we grew 7 to 8 times what we were doing the same year prior, right? Really fantastic growth and all those other things. So I've got some vague interest and some sort of understanding of what that looked like for obviously me and what it happened. But I'd love to understand that growth that you're talking about is I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, what do you think caused that rapid growth to just that bell curve within your business?
So a couple of things. There was a marketing component, that was useful. We got a good campaign that worked. That was helpful. But more broadly speaking, I think that the team is the thing. So a good marketing campaign with no team will still be massively constrained. You can have the most successful campaign in history, but if you can only take 10 sales calls a month, you're still only going to get 10 sales calls a month in the calendar, right? So if your capacity to grow your business will be directly related to your capacity to grow a successful team. So that includes successful hiring, successful culture nurturing, successful onboarding, successful management, all of that kind of stuff. And that's an ongoing process. So here's a trap though that is with that. So I can say with absolute certainty that our growth is because of our team. We grew a pretty big team. We actually have downsized our team. We actually had to let go 20% of our team last year, which was really tough, right? Because we grew faster. Our growth trajectory changed slightly. But because I started to realize that our capacity to grow was directly linked to our capacity to have an excellent team, I started to view the number of team we had as the success metric, which is a wrong move.
Yeah.
And so I started to measure our success by how big our team was. Oh yeah, we're killing it. We've got, we had 85 team at one point, right? Which is decent. And that was the wrong metric. And so the thing that gets you out of Egypt won't get you to the promised land. So the thing that can give you the growth isn't the thing necessarily that's going to give you what you want in business. And you've also got to be clear on what your success metrics are, because growth is one of my highest values. I am good at growing, but I actually don't care really about. I don't really care about material things and cash and stuff like that. I care about growth and impact. And so, which is awesome when you're growing the business really, really fast, but then also there's other things that you need to measure success on, like net cash flow and profit per employee and, all of these other kind of metrics that are really, really important. And so you've just got to understand where your natural biases are and then build systems in around it. So for example, my bias is towards growth. And so now we've got a GM who is like my 2IC. He has a real bias towards efficiency and profit. so it's a really great balance, because I'll be like, let's do this, and he's like, let's look at the bottom line, and it's a really great camaraderie to make sure that we are doing things correctly in both ways. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and look, again, I sort of introduced the podcast and whatnot, I've gotten to see a little bit behind the scenes. And from your initial stages anyway, before that bell curve growth and everything else, I'd love to understand, because I got to see you from what I understood, it was just you and Gabby at the time. Was it just you and Gabby working in the business at the time?
Yeah, and we had one team member in the Philippines. Her name's Amy. She's still with us today. So Amy joined the business 3 months after we started the business, or thereabouts, and so she's been with us the whole time, and she's now in our leadership team as well. So awesome. She's a very significant part of the business.
Yeah. So to even go from the 2/3, all the 4 if you include the coffee machine, but you went from 2 people all the way through to your staff members and the amount of staff members that you have today. I'd love to understand what's different about, obviously there's different things that you're focusing on. There's different things that you're really paying attention to, right? Because of the level that you're at and the problem. And now obviously you've brought in people, you've got executives, you've got managers and all these other things. Love to understand what's the difference between, where you were versus now an 8-figure business. Where do you spend your time and focus on a weekly basis now?
It's a great question. So there's different stages in business, obviously, right? And so at the start, I have a belief that marketing is more important than sales. But in the very first instance, sales is what matters. So you've got to do what you can do to sell. Because if you don't have any clients and if you don't have any revenue, you can't market, you'll die, you'll suffocate. Without sales, the business dies. And so in the first instance, it's sales and marketing with a focus on how do we sell, how do we sign up clients. And then once you start to get those things working, then you need to think about systems because what will happen before you can even start to hire people is you'll actually need to be like, well, how does this thing work? Because the systems, and when I say systems, I don't necessarily mean going and writing SOPs for every bloody thing or anything like that, but working out what is our systematic process to delivering value to our clients. There's nothing more important, just to be clear, there is absolutely nothing more important in business than your clients or your customers. Without them, you don't have a business. And if you have a business that is not designed to serve them, it's not going to be in business for long. And so fundamentally, if once you start work, and this is actually what happened to us, we actually started signing up clients, and then we went, holy shit, people are giving us money to help them achieve financial freedom. That is an insane responsibility. How do we make sure we don't stuff this up? And so we just kept throwing money back into the business to continually get better and 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 better, which is kind of like a compound effect, which we're seeing the tail of now. And so, thinking through that, but then it's people. And then once you get people, then it changes. It's about culture and leadership. And a lot of people think that the way to get a team to be effective at their job is to tell them exactly how to do every little thing inside the business, right? An SOP for everything. An SOP on how to open Google Drive, an SOP on how to check their emails. And it's like, I firmly believe that if you can develop the culture that helps people to understand how to behave and then give them some guidelines, they're actually going to be far more effective and far more autonomous. No one wants to be micromanaged. No one wants to be a micromanager. So kind of like moving forward even a little bit further, you start to then think about what are five-figure activities, what are six-figure activities, what are seven-figure activities, and what are eight-figure activities. And so for me, eight-figure activities are not, hey, does anyone know, we're writing a new email, or actually, like, does anyone know how should I respond to this person? It's like, well, look, get out. You know, come on, guys, work it out, right? Like, speak to each other, or, geez, use ChatGPT or something. I don't know, right? And so you got to really get yourself out of the weeds. And eight-figure decisions are really decisions about what are going to be the next 10x moves or the next 100x moves. So when you're in a six-figure decision, it's what's going to happen next week. How are we putting food on the table? How are we going to make sure we're going to survive the next month? What's that next step? Whereas I'm actually focused primarily on a couple of key areas, but those key areas are specifically around what are the macro shifts that need to happen so that we can 10x or 100x the business. Or in a very practical sense, we now have two businesses, right? And so the decisions that I'm making today in Dashdot are decisions that are likely to 5x to 10x Dashdot over the next 3 years. That is the scale at which I'm looking at the moment. I have 10-year and longer, 25-year plans and stuff, but you can't make decisions that far ahead. And so specifically what I'm looking for is over the next 3 years, the baseline is that we're going to 5x the business. And then on the high side, we're going to 10x the business. And so what are the decisions or things that I need to do now that are going to set that kind of stuff up? With Global PropTech Solutions, we're actually looking to, we're looking at like a 10-figure exit type thing in a few years. So that's a different set of ideas, but it's the same level. And so then when you start thinking about not how am I going to make the next $100,000 in the business, or how am I going to make the next $1 million in the business, you actually then start thinking about, okay, what needs to happen for this business to be worth $100 million, or what has to happen for this business to be worth $150 million, or in fact, what has to happen to this business for this to be a $1 billion value business, and then you start to make different kinds of decisions. That doesn't mean that you're spending all of your time just like dreaming big and doing all that kind of stuff. Like, I have a little bit of time for that in my day, right, or in my week, but there's a lot of actual practical application, and you're only going to achieve that through empowerment of others, right? You will not take yourself there. In fact, everybody else is going to take you there. And so your job is to be able to get really clear on where you're going, why you're going there, how you're going to get there, and then be able to accurately and clearly and concisely communicate that with the people around you in such a way that it inspires them to go on that journey with you, because you're not going to build a big business. Your team is going to build a big business. And as soon as you get out of your ego and realize that it's got nothing to do with you, you've got to serve them to help them grow the big business. That's when you're going to become more successful.
I love that. Great little gold nuggets. I think the one thing I wrote down while you're talking, pardon me, is culture on how to behave. I really liked that little line. It really resonates. Like, I'm so happy with our team, and I can tell, when someone's sort of a fit or not a fit for our team, and things like that. And there was, and I'm sure you've probably overcome a lot of these things, but there was a time where I thought I had to really get on with someone. But obviously realizing that, everyone obviously brings their own traits, their own unique abilities and things like that as well during that process.
Can we talk about that? Because it's really interesting, right? Because a lot of people, so first things first, anyone who wants to lead others needs to remember to be friendly but not friends. friendly but not friends, which can be pretty hard when you go from a small team to a medium team, because you're like the people around you, you're all buddy. Maybe you go and get drinks and lunch and, but it becomes really hard to be an effective leader if you're trying to lead someone who you're going around to their house on a weekend for barbecues and all of that kind of stuff. A lot of people might not like this. They're like, oh, but what? But we're like a family. Screw that. We're not a family. We're a team, right? And people get cut from teams if they don't perform and all of that kind of stuff. You can be compassionate and loving and kind and caring. I'm all of those things with every single one of our team members. I freaking loved a lot of them, right? But be friendly but not friends. So you should be approachable. You should be all these kind of things, but not friends. And that's a big distinction, because things get really hard when you blur those lines, right? Now, there are people in the team where they are the type of people who I would hang out with outside. But guess what? We're focused on our work and our mission, and that's the thing that we're doing. So we actually don't do a lot of that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean you can't bond and have team days and things like that. The other thing is about kind of culture, right? And so culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is, I think, Peter Drucker coined that phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it is so true. So we have a set of 21 operating principles. And it's our Dashdot operating principles, how we do things here. And those operating principles really give us a guide on how do we behave. It literally tackles things like, when do we break the rules so that we can deliver better service for our clients? Okay, this is how and why and when we do it. And this is how we behave. And so stitching those two things together so that you can really focus on developing the culture in your team, that's the thing that's going to carry your business forward. Personally, it's one of the most high value things you can do is develop the right culture. People think of people management and they think of HR, and I'm like, HR, that's like paperwork and admin and bureaucracy. But one of the early executives that we got into our team, and one of the key executives that we've got in our team, is our head of people and culture. And that focus on how do we develop, when we got to a team of 12, I think it was, we were like, okay, if we're going to grow to a $100 million business or beyond, now is when we need to focus on culture, right now. And we were a team of 12. And so that was early on, and we were like, right, let's really nail that piece. And I'd say that's probably something that a lot of businesses miss.
And I'm glad I've gotten the culture piece from you, because I know that you won. Can you just remind me the award from Deloitte? I remember seeing something on your thing, but you received an award that recognised the culture and the work-life culture balance or something. But do you want to tell me a little bit more?
Well, so we've been nominated for a couple of awards. So we were in the AFR Fast Starters. We were voted the 14th fastest, not voted, but they do it assess. We're the 14th fastest growing technology company in Australia. That's public or private. That's of any size in any industry. So we were literally the 14th fastest growing technology company in the whole country. Yeah.
Okay.
And that is without any venture capital funding or anything like that, which is pretty wild, right? So we were the only property company in that whole list, which is really interesting. We also have been nominated for Best Place to Work in Australia as well. So the way we think about culture is really interesting. Like we have a work from anywhere policy. We tested out having an office for a while because we thought it'd be nice to have a hub, but people didn't want to use it, right? It was nice, but it was not a need to have. So we've got a work from anywhere policy. In fact, we actually encourage our team to work from anywhere. Like we openly talk about like how to check your time zones, how if you're traveling, how to make sure you've got the right internet connection. We encourage it because I really want people's work and life to be integrated, not separated. People think work-life balance and they think I'm going to do one and then the other, yada, yada, yada. We also have an unlimited paid annual leave policy. So literally anyone can work from anywhere and they can take as much time off as they need and they get paid for all of their time off. We have all kinds of other things, including, I think it's actually the best parental leave policy in the whole country. Loads of other stuff, because what we tried to do is we just said, I guess there's a benefit, and I never really had a real job, so I